The SEC are a bunch of wimps. There you go. Show's over. We'll see you next time. Just kidding. I'm Pete Mundo, Heartland College Sports, covering the Big 12 Conference. But seriously, SEC, you had a chance to increase to 9 conference games. You were like, no, we're good. We're going to stay at 8 because we really like playing Lamar and Georgia Southern in late November, mid-September, whatever it might be. You just love those FCS games in mid to late November. You can't get enough of those. It's really pathetic. And it's even more pathetic that the rest of college football media won't just call them out. I mean, I understand the SEC is the best college football conference. I'm not here to convince you otherwise. I'm not. I'm a Big 12 guy. You watch this show, you know that. You follow this show, you know that. You know where my allegiances lie. But what I will say is that the fact that the college football media landscape at large does not call out the SEC for what it is, and that is a conference that says we're so good we can play less conference games and get away with it because nobody else will call us out about it, that's ridiculous. Should the Big 12 basketball schedule, should they drop to 16 conference games instead of playing 18? What do you think? Is that something that, they should do with a true round robin? I know some of you will say, well, some conferences play 20, but my point being, if you just call yourself the best conference in fill-in-the-blank sport, does that give you carte blanche to say we're playing less conference games and no one's going to call us out, so we're just going to do it this way? That's the part of this, to me, that is so frustrating. That's the part of this that you sit there, you try to follow this, and you say to yourself, why? Why won't the rest of college football media at least have a little bit of an opinion when it comes to the SEC continually bailing itself out by saying we are so good, we do not have to play 9 conference games? Like the Pac-12, like the Big 12, and like the Big 10. Why not? So that decision was made this past week by the SEC. They had their meetings, and they said we're only playing 8 conference games. This is only for the 2024 season. They could change this going forward, but this is for the 2024 season when Texas and Oklahoma are set to join. They will drop divisions. That's good. Now, it's not – the SEC West versus the SEC East is not as bad as the gap between, say, the Big 10 East and the Big 10 West, but there still is a gap there. There still is a gap there. There's no doubt about it. And that's something that needs to be noted as well going forward. So they are dropping that. So I'll give them props on that. I give credit where it's due. I'm a fair arbiter of the news. That's what we do here at Heartland College Sports. By the way, hit that subscribe button on the show. Appreciate you joining us. Whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on the radio show, whether it is, of course, on the podcast. Rate, review, subscribe. Send me a screenshot to Pete Mundo, Mundo, at heartlandcollegesports.com, and we'll get you hooked up with a free Heartland College Sports koozie. Subscribe. So with that being said, I'm just, as a Big 12 guy, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, what are the SEC's excuses? That's what I want to know. Well, apparently, and I never thought I'd see this, Texas A&M was the school most aggressively pushing to play 9 games. Why? That would give them an annual matchup against Texas. Right now, with 8 conference games, if that holds, you will only have one rival that you play every year. In Texas's case, that's going to be Oklahoma. If they get 9 conference games, you will have 2 guaranteed rivalries in the SEC every year. And in the case of Texas A&M, they would be added to Texas's list as their number 2 rival behind Oklahoma. So for A&M, they want to play Texas every year. First off, they think that they can now beat Texas on a regular basis. They've seen Texas be, for the most part, mediocre for a decade and a half, and they're not afraid of Texas anymore. So they wanted to be on the annual Play Texas list. And I don't blame them for feeling that way, by the way. I'll just add that to the equation as well. So A&M was most aggressively pushing 9 games. Florida, Georgia, LSU, and Missouri also publicly favored 9 games. That's according to ESPN. Other schools remained on the fence. Alabama's Nick Saban wasn't so sure about it. Others had concerns as well. The big thing that the SEC wanted to get was more money for adding a 9th game. If ESPN were to throw in additional revenue for a ninth conference game, the schools would be hard-pressed to turn it down. That would be a very difficult thing for them to do. So if ESPN comes to the table and says, hey, you guys start playing conference games instead of playing Lamar, instead of playing Georgia Southern, we'll help you out, we'll hook you up. But in the meantime, if it's just about doing the right thing, they're not going to do it. Because, by the way, and I got to give Peter Burns of ESPN credit for this. I saw this on his Twitter yesterday, and we shared this on our Instagram page. Follow us there at Heartland College Sports. Since the NCAA approved 12-game schedules back in 2006, no team playing a 9-game conference schedule has ever won a college football national championship. You heard that right. No team playing a 9-game conference schedule has ever won a college football national championship. The Big Ten, the Pac-12, the Big 12 have not won a title since moving to 9 conference games. Meanwhile, the SEC has won 13, the ACC has won 3. I don't sit here and say that's the reason that the Big 12, the Pac-12, the Big Ten have not won national championships, but it certainly doesn't hurt. It certainly doesn't hurt when you're talking about college kids and they don't have to play an extra conference game. And not only are they not playing an extra conference game, but oftentimes they're playing an FCS opponent instead. Right? And that is not inconsequential, and it should not be viewed as inconsequential. It shouldn't be. For some it is, but it really should not be. So I'm glad and I appreciate Peter Burns pointing that out from ESPN. That was very good stuff. By the way, I heard he's getting fired next week. So I'm kidding. I'm just saying that doesn't fit the ESPN narrative, so I had to throw that in there for you as well. But, this is going to be something that is worth watching. It should be watched very closely. And if there's one area I will give ESPN the benefit of the doubt, it is this. We don't know what strength of schedule is going to look like. We don't know how strength of schedule is going to play a role going forward in what the ESPN is going to do and what the college football playoff is going to do. And since we don't have that information, I understand why they might be a little skeptical to say we're going to add a 9th conference game. But here's what also annoyed me about all this, with the SEC staying at 8 games, 8 conference games. Greg McElroy, who I think is a good analyst, I do like Greg McElroy, but on his YouTube channel, he said this past week that the other conferences should play 10 conference games to improve their strength of schedule. So he made the case that he said here, if I were the Big 12, I would play 10 conference games. He said if I were the Pac-12, I'd play 10 conference games. He goes, I would play as many as humanly possible to try and get 1 or 2 big games on the schedule every year. He goes, I wouldn't play any group of 5. I wouldn't play any FCS because I don't think they're getting the benefit of the doubt. A couple of things there. First off, that's insane. So the SEC teams can play 2 FCS opponents. The Big 12 should play none. I don't think anybody should play FCS opponents, but I understand the monetary value it provides to the FCS schools. A lot of them will, have their athletic departments funded in part by getting their butts kicked by a major Power 5 team. So I'm respectful of that. But are you kidding me? The SEC can play 2, including 1 in November, and the Big 12 should play no FCS games and should have 10 conference games? I mean, that's ridiculous from Greg McElroy, who I do have a lot of respect for, but that is ridiculous. It's an insane comment to make for the guy. No, they should not have to play 10. And by the way, the whole benefit of the doubt when it comes to a college football playoff, here's the thing. The playoff expands, right, in 24. And the way it's going to work is that the Big 12 is all but guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. Here's how it's going to work, just as a reminder. The six highest ranked conference champions, as determined by the College Football Playoff Committee, will receive automatic bids. Now, that doesn't guarantee the Big 12 a spot, but in a world with a Power 5, and by the way, who knows what the Pac-12 will look like before long, in a world with a Power 5, if you're the Big 12 champion, the odds that you aren't one of the 6 highest ranked conference champions is slim to none. Very rare that that's going to happen, especially with the Big 12 that plays 1 versus 2 and has a divisionless format, because that prevents, a total shocking upset if you have division formats and one division is far weaker than the other, and that weaker opponent ends up upsetting the better opponent in the conference championship game. That could create a scenario where the conference champion is not very highly ranked or not ranked at all. That's not likely to happen in the Big 12. The Big 12 is all but guaranteed a spot in the college football playoff. Now, the other 6 teams of a 12-team format are going to be at-large bids. So, yes, it is going to be tough to get to, because we all know the fetish with the SEC is going to continue with the College Football Playoff Committee. But Greg McElroy saying they should play 10 conference games in the Big 12 is insane. I mean, I want more great games, but that is insanely unfair to say about the Big 12 compared to the SEC. So I am not buying that one for a second. No way, no how. Now, also want to spend some time with you here on HeartlandCollegeSports.com. I'm Pete Mundo, by the way. If you're joining us, thanks for being here. However you're getting the show, hit that subscribe button. We so appreciate you doing it and being a part of the show.